All right, welcome everybody to Booze Hour Community Edition today. Today I'm really excited to have on Beier Cai. I will bring him on in just a few moments. What I have been teasing to everybody is that I have another really special guest that's going to be on next week on Community Edition as well. So I'm not going to bait everyone into watching this for an hour before I announce that, but we'll have Ethan Banks on. Now, for folks who are not from the IT network engineering world, Ethan Banks is one of the co-hosts and co-founders of PacketPushers.net. And Packet Pushers is a lot more than just a website. It started off originally actually spawning from Ethan and Greg Farrow getting together. They were both blogging. They had PacketPushers.net. It became, how I discovered them actually was their podcast, Packet Pushers. And it got pretty big from there. So somewhat of a worldwide known fellow in terms of IT networking. So I'm super excited to have him on next week. What I will mention before we bring Beier on as well is, aside from Ethan next week, we'll also have on Rick Salsa. Rick is from F5's product team and will be on the cloud edition of Booze Hour talking about cloud services at F5. He covers off cloud services DNS solutions, and Rick also touches a little bit of Nginx now too. And just with the next couple weeks, I think you guys will hear a little bit more from the Nginx side of F5. It's been about a year since that acquisition, so it's about time that we started to talk about that a lot more during Booze Hour. So lots of exciting stuff to talk about there. Now, if you're watching this via YouTube right now, I'd ask that you click subscribe down below here if you have not subscribed to the channel already. If you click on the thumbs up, that'll give me a like. If you click on the thumbs down, maybe avoid that. Just ping me personally if you have any issues. Click on the bell if you want notifications. That way you'll know when we go live and when I have new videos dropping. Right now, there's a Monday live show that myself and Daryl are doing at this point. So our weekly update with our technical video newsletter, if you will, for folks. We share that on Mondays, and we're going live with that. So for 30 minutes on Monday mornings, we're just there for Q&A. We'll go over the week's technical news as far as F5. We also touch on a little bit of the industry news that's come out as well. We usually introduce a guest from somewhere in the world of Daryl and Boo really quickly, doing Q&A with them. Not as long as something like a Community Edition where we really get to know a guest, but something really quick. And then during the week, we have a Community Edition, which is this live stream, and we have a Cloud Edition, which is more of a technical one. Community Edition is getting to know somebody who's positively contributing to the world. And aside from that, I started to do a little bit of an AMA on Fridays as well. That one's also just kind of a half-hour quick one, jump on, answer anybody's questions, and hopefully end off a Friday on a good note. So without further ado, I will bring on Beier Cai. Now, Beier is someone that I met a few years back now when he was still at Hootsuite. And I just always remember Beier always smiling when I talk to him, just the friendliest guy in the world. And then as you talk to him, you realize this was the guy that originally built Hootsuite, which is this unicorn. If folks aren't familiar with Hootsuite, it's this unicorn of a company within Vancouver, a big employer inside of Vancouver, a great success story. So Beier is the guy that was one of the guys that started the whole thing. So without further ado, let me bring on Beier. Hey, Beier, how you doing?
Oh, hey, Bo. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing very good. I wish I was outside like you, though. It looks beautiful there right now.
It's such a nice day in Vancouver to do the booth hours, right? So I assume this is more like a relaxed conversation. So if you don't mind, I have beer with me right now. So
Oh, I should have grabbed one myself.
it's called booth hour. I thought this is like official thing.
Well, you know what? That's how Booze Hour started. So I'll show you something. Now, for folks who don't get the history of Booze Hour, I started when COVID first started, I started a virtual happy hour. A few people started virtual happy hour. My virtual happy hour was open to everybody and that was on my LinkedIn or whatever social I blasted it out to. So at times we had like 50 people on who were just from wherever. And I first started it off saying, you know what, here's a virtual happy hour. I just called it a happy hour. And I started to make posts, and I would post because at that time there was rumors that the liquor store would close. And so I was like, oh, I better go to the liquor store and grab all my booze that I need for like maybe the next couple months. So I went and I probably spent about $200, and I was like, okay, I don't drink that much, but you know, a couple $100 that'll last me for, you know, a couple months or so. So I would post a picture and say, okay, here's all the beers I have. I'm going to taste test one of these during booze hour. And so this is the first one, or one of the first ones that I got, Super 8-Bit IPA. And then if you notice up here, I have the 8-bit font for booze hour. So that's kind of the history behind there. My world is full of kind of inside jokes and stuff like that. Like a lot of technical people do when they code and stuff, they leave little trails of their signature behind that people find along the way. They're breadcrumbs,
Yeah,
if you will.
yeah, that's super cool to know, man. I'm just like, you know, quite fascinated. It's quite fascinated to see. I mean, as bad as this whole, you know, COVID-19, the whole pandemic thing is, at the same time, I'm just seeing a lot of really creative and interesting way that people do virtual get-togethers, right? I mean, obviously in a
Mhm.
workplace environment, most of the, you know, tech companies, they essentially shut down their office, as you know, and
Mhm.
but people aren't, you know, really bothered by this. They're finding creative ways to get together. I see companies doing virtual lunch. They're doing virtual coffees. They are doing like gaming sessions together. Yeah, just all sort of things to keep in touch, to stay in touch, and you know, not being kind of too lonely, I guess, kind of in a working from home environment. I don't know if like I don't know how like if yeah, I really think that, you know, at least in the tech industry that I can speak of, you know, this will have a pretty long lasting effect, you know,
Yeah.
just in terms of remote working in general.
I think a lot of people weren't turning on video before this, and then I personally found that way more people turned on video because I think they realized that you need to see people's faces to really get a personal connection with them.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, yes, actually, I have the same experience. You know, we have virtual gatherings a lot at Commit, and initially, a lot of people turn off their videos, and you know, and sometimes I do that as well. It just when I'm not well dressed, I guess, properly dressed, I turn off the video, right? But then
Yeah.
later on, you realize there's such a I like the meaning of video conference is different from before, right?
Hmm.
This is literally like a social time besides meeting time. So it's better to turn on the video. Honestly, you don't need to dress that well, right? As long as something proper, you know, you can just turn on the video.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, not a lot of people are wearing dress pants right now. Everybody's in shorts. Everybody's at home. Their pets are all over the place. Their kids are walking in. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I don't know if people are going to be that hard on you if you're not, you know, fully dressed in what you'd wear for business attire.
totally, yeah, yeah. And then
Yeah.
just a quick warning ahead of time. My kids may pop up, you know, in my on my screen at any minute. So I apologize for that in advance.
Yeah, well, it's usually my dog is the one that. So my office is right by our front door, and my dog is usually sleeping all day. But if a mailman or delivery person, because Amazon is basically at my house like every 2 days at this point, um, anytime somebody steps foot on the first step of the porch, my dog just goes crazy, and you can hear it because the door is right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So wanted to dig into, you know, maybe spend the first little while of just learning more about yourself, Bear. Now I know some of your history, but you were not born in Canada. You immigrated to Canada.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've been in Canada for. I just turned to 40,
Oh,
and
cool.
I spent 20 years in Canada, the latter half, and then the first half of my time in China. So that's where I came from. And yeah, it's pretty different. Like pretty different. Like 20 years. Like my
Mm,
first 20 years was besides school, obviously. was all about piano, like music. So
Oh,
that's gonna, so that's so my family was essentially like a music, like my mom and dad, they're all musicians. And
oh,
when I
really?
was born, the writing is on the wall. Hey, this boy is gonna be a pianist or a violinist, whatever it is.
Mm.
And yeah, kind of pick up piano when I was 4.5, and
Wow.
pretty much since then, from that point all the way all the way to about 18, I just practice piano almost like a professional, practice every day. On average, I would say like 4 hours a day, and
Wow.
towards a later age, probably 6 hours a day. So my
Wow.
life is pretty much just school and piano, until I injured myself when I was riding my bike, kind of crushed my one of my fingers, and there's
Mm,
a bone segment that have to do a surgery to take it out. Took me about a year to recover and missed the whole musical school kind of thing.
mm,
So long story short, that's kind of actually how I transitioned back to transition my focus back to school, right? Finish the high school, get into a university, and around that time, my parents decided, Bear, maybe you should go to North America, like Canada or US. And yeah, we decided to come to Vancouver. So yeah, I arrived in Vancouver literally like 20 years ago,
huh.
on I remember May 9th, 2000, the year 2000.
Oh,
So yeah,
wow.
it's been 20 years.
Yeah. Happy anniversary then. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. So did you go to SFU, right? You mentioned you went to SFU. Did you go to SFU right away then?
No, so I came to Canada with probably like 200 words in English.
Mm,
So 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 yeah, so definitely the first year or so just learning English, right?
hmm
As most of the immigrants do, and yeah, and then also kind of went to a university college. That's where
mm.
I started looking into university courses and bought my bought my first computer. I never touched the computer before that.
No way.
And yeah, I just like I think one of the things about doing music, in the early years, it trained me to really love mathematics. Like
Mm,
math is just like one of the topic I one of the subjects I really enjoy doing.
mm,
And I think because of that, and then everybody at school got a computer. I was like, I gotta get one of those as well. So as many people, just like many people, I started playing games, and I just got instantly hooked. Right? Oh my god, this is like magic to me. Now the next question is, how does it work? So that's kind
mm.
of when and with my math kind of interest, and then computer in general, that's when I decided maybe I just take comp science as a major. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then that's what I did.
Wow. So what was your first computer?
Oh, geez, it's a Windows 95. It's just the PC.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah. A lot of people at my age, they deal with all the DOS, before the actual Windows. But
Yeah.
like I'm actually post that. Uh,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, so we have our Monday show I mentioned
Uh-huh.
in the preamble there, and we have a Q&A, and one of the Q&A questions was what was your first computer? And the most
Uh-huh.
popular one is always the Apple IIe. So even
Mm,
before
yeah,
DOS.
totally.
uh,
Yeah,
so
before my time.
yeah, so that's amazing that you got a computer at like 2021 and you're where you are today. Kind of
Yeah.
speaks to how your education previous to that kind of led you up to that. Um,
Mhm.
so then from there, you were taking comp sci in community college, and then you went to SFU.
Yeah, that's when I transferred to SIP on the second year, and took the comp science major. Yeah, spent about 5 years there. I took a year and a half break.
Mm,
That break, I essentially, because I mean everything was pretty expensive in Vancouver compared with China. The tuition fee as a international student, I have to pay three times, like triple the tuition fee compared with local students. Just like super expensive. And
mhm,
my family supported me for a while, but I just don't want to put too much pressure on my parents. So
mm.
so I decided to take a break and maybe do something. And that's when I started selling stuff on eBay.
Oh,
Like
really?
just yeah, because back then that was 2002. eBay was like popular, right? And everybody's selling stuff, and I have connections in China, with very cheap good. So I imported, yeah, just sometimes importing into Canada, sometimes drop shipping, whatever it takes. So I did that for about a year and a half, and then using my skill set in computer, I started doing website design and created a website of my own as a like a e-commerce, early stage e-commerce as an auxiliary avenue then like besides eBay. Yeah, I did that for about a year and a half, and then later on, everybody's like selling on eBay the same thing, and business wasn't good anymore. And for me, it's time to go back to school. So that's what I did.
What kind of stuff were you selling on eBay then?
Oh my God, just all sort of stuff,
Oh, really?
anything. Yeah, whatever that makes money, I guess.
Yeah. And
Yeah, it's just like
and you mentioned you were drop shipping. Were you also shipping yourself? Like you'd have to package it and send it
I
out?
do. Yeah, I
Wow.
do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah. For stuff that I mean, it's just it's just like as any inventory management. Back then, for certain stuff, you want to ship fast, right?
Mm,
And that's when I import from China to here, and then I just do all the packaging. And like I have a business account with Canada Post, and I'm a regular visitor. Like they knew me well, and it's pretty fun. A year and a half. Obviously, not never my intention to do that long term, just
mm.
to get by and can support my continued study here.
Wow. Wow. That's really cool. So you went back to school and you finished a full degree then, major in comp sci?
Yeah, that's what I did. Finished the school and yeah, essentially graduated in 2006. Yeah, and
Mm,
then obviously, I think around that time the tech industry had a big rebounds, right?
mm,
And the 2000 crash, and then over time it got better. And yeah, and like I just never second doubted the decision to go with comp science, and
mhm,
knowing that I can get a job later on. And
mm,
I mean, my family is pretty traditional. They recommended me. I mean, not they quote unquote recommended me to work
mm,
for a big stable company,
mm,
and that's what I did. I was just like, which company is big,
mm.
and then who's looking, and that's when I joined Johnson Johnson, which is a
Oh.
brand which is really popular in China, and
Mm,
like they have all these baby stuff, right? And that's the brand that most of the babies in China grew up with.
mm.
And so that kind of make my parents proud. Hey, look, I'm working for this company now. But yeah, a few months into that, I was just really bored, and I knew this kind of thing is not for me at all. So yeah, so I gave it a whole year, and then pretty much on the year mark, I decided to move on. And ever since then, just always work in the startup environment, which I really enjoy. Yeah, so the rest of it essentially kind of history.
So from there, did you immediately go to Invoke?
No. So yeah, with through introduction, I joined a company, a small startup called Navaric, and so I was there for about a year,
Mm,
and so that's a small startup, about I would say 20-30 people,
mm,
and just amazing team. It's kind of in oil and gas industry, essentially a B2B software to manage the entire kind of supply chain logistics,
mm.
shipping, in the oil and gas industry. Yeah, I think the lessons I've learned from that year is just like life is short. Working with amazing people,
Mm,
like that's one of the major things that I have in mind. Like no matter what job I do, I just want to work with great people together.
mm. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
And then from there, is that when you ended up at Invoke then?
yeah. I was introduced to Ryan, and it's just like like Ryan is just really such a cool guy. He back then. So the agency, the Invoke Media agency, they do a lot of client work, consulting, dev shop, but
Mm,
also they also build internal product. They use the revenue generated from the consulting work to do internal innovation. So when I joined Invoke, I was tasked kind of essentially with another designer. His name is Paul Donnelly. The two of us we pair up together. essentially to try to build different products, like try out different ideas. So we iterate. First idea took about a month, and didn't work out, didn't get much traction. The second idea we were halfway through, and then Ryan came up with this interesting idea. Let's build a Twitter toolbox. So that's essentially what Paul and I what we did. So I do the whole app coding, and Paul does the design, all the amazing design work. So yeah, so we finished up the V1, the POC, actually MVP in about a month, and then just released it, and then people start using it internally and friendlies, and they started getting traction, and then they tell their friends, and all of a sudden this kind of viral effect, all of a sudden we just have lots of startups, sorry, lots of companies, individuals or even companies using the tool. And yeah, and then it just took off from there.
Wow. So was it always Ryan's plan to have Invoke become a tech company then? Like that was his end goal, is to create a tech company, not a marketing company?
You know what? We never really talked about that, but I'm like 99% sure Ryan is not someone who just like build a I guess kind of lifestyle business in consulting. Like I think that's why he always used the money he makes from the agency to fund internal innovation, right? And obviously, you need a combination of like luck and ability and all that stuff to make it successful. But I'm pretty sure building a business, a long-lasting product, is always something he's got in mind.
Yeah. Wow, that's really neat. And so in those early days, did Twitter have an API at that point?
They do, very, very bare minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that created the opportunity for us, right? I mean, the whole Twitter thing is pretty limited. Like the basic functionality is there, and it got a ton of traction, which is great. But when it comes to business using that product itself to do different activities like doing customer support or sharing content or whatever they do as a team, it's just really awkward to do that directly on Twitter. So that created opportunity for us in terms of really extending the functionality on top of their API and really solve the professional user or business users problems.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So what were the first 6 months like when you were building that then? Like how quickly was it from MVP to like paying customers to 6 months?
Yeah, good question. So, man, I wish I remember exactly what it's. Like when it's one of those things when I mean, first of all, it's a long time ago, and second of all, things just move so fast back in the days. You literally don't remember much.
Yeah.
I would summarize. I would say the early days, the first 6 months or a year. Obviously, there's every day you're just building features. You get feedback. I mean, I think this is one thing I've learned from so just one quick thing. When I was at school, I actually did a startup with a couple of kind of co-op. So with a couple of people that I know through my co-ops. So the managers, my managers at co-op, and we did a startup, and the idea is very similar to a Yelp, the business directory and rating. That was back in 2005, and we spent about half a year just building features and building features without talking to any potential customer at all. Like for me, I was like, oh, we need more features. We need to make it perfect. And then we'll do a big bang release. And obviously that startup just didn't go anywhere at all. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned is just like, you can't create problems that people may not have, or you cannot assume well, you cannot just like build things forever before releasing it. Like learning happens on production, right? So that lesson stuck with me forever, right? And then everything I do following that, it's just like always constant reminder. So fast forward to Hootsuite, you know, as a developer, obviously it's a whole team effort, but personally speaking, I became less of a technology perfectionist. I was more like, let's iterate, let's build fast, let's just get it on production. So yeah, just the early days, lots of iteration.
Mm.
Every day, every few days, we are a small team. We're able to get feedback. Like by day, I write features. At night, I go to Twitter. I look at who's complaining about Hootsuite. Who's like complaining about, oh, this feature, so this thing is not working. There's a bug here or there. I just listen to those and I literally fix it real time and then reply the tweet, hey, it's fixed. Can you try it out again? So just a
Wow.
lot of that, like, but back then I direct don't copy this. This is the worst practice. I just had the urge of, fixing the bug. I goes to production directly and just fix the code on production directly. Yeah, just like I wanted to impress the user so much, right? But obviously that's a bad practice, and I stopped doing that pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of those moments, and I remember, essentially in late 2018, 2008, we all of a sudden realized Obama was using Hootsuite, which is
Huh.
which is really really amazing. I think that is one of the moments the whole company, the whole team realized, oh my God, we're onto something real. I mean, back then Obama was he leveraged social media really well, kind of running the presidential campaign, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. And so, how did you guys find that out?
Oh, I mean, anyone who signed up, we know immediately, right? But when
Yeah.
we saw the profile, yeah, I think a lot of people in the office were shocked. And
Wow.
the immediate thing I start thinking is, oh, okay, now I need to start thinking about the security. you know,
Mm.
this thing must be secure now. Password, it's got to be complicated password now, not simple ones.
Yeah. Would something like the elections at that time, did you guys really have to think about scale during that time?
No, no, back then, no, not much. I mean, we use back then, LAMP stack is pretty much the de facto standard building web applications, and that's what we did. And at the scale we have, we were able to survive for quite a few years with the LAMP stack.
Mm.
And I mean, it's less of the actual web server and the application layer. The scalability issue, when we start having scalability issue, it's really the database itself, not so
Mm.
much about the PHP or Apache server, those kind of things.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting. So that scaling technology wise, how did it look as you were scaling an engineering team during that time?
Good question. Yeah, I think, first of all, like going back to, like, we had a pretty amazing team to begin with.
Mhm.
Like everybody's very passionate, and there's a lot of respect among each other, and we all just working hard and playing harder. The kind of attitude, I guess. And I think that early team really established the type of kind of culture from the very beginning. And once we had that, bringing new members in, like, it's pretty easy to tell, hey, if this person, this engineer would be a fit for what we are, the kind of the type of culture we are trying to build within the company, right? So
Mm.
obviously we do technical interviews that just like everyone else do. But we relied a lot on referrals. I think referral is just one of the best hiring strategy you can have. People within the network, they refer people who are similar in a sense that the team can work well together, right? So I believe at one point our new hires were like majority of the new hires were through referrals one way or another. So I think that worked out really well.
Mm.
And yeah, and then in terms of team structure, we went through several iterations. At the
Mm.
beginning, everybody's do a bit of everything. There's no accountability in terms of different areas of the product. Everybody's doing the same. picking up tickets and just get it done, right? And but then later on, as we have more kind of specialized, like more features, and now they are grouped into themes. That's when we started designing the team according to the like structure the team according to different product themes, right?
Mm,
And then yeah, and then after that, then everything got bigger. Then it's a totally different story in terms of scaling. Like so, what I mean is back then we had about 50 people, right?
mhm,
But once it's beyond 100 people, then it's a totally different story to scale
mm.
up. To manage that scale, I guess.
Yeah. Wow, interesting. A lot to unpack there, I think. And that probably has a lot to do with what you're doing now with Commit, starting off or getting engineers. I believe you can explain probably much better, but you place engineers into startups, specifically kind of find the right places for them and make the right arrangements for them.
Yeah, good question. So I
Maybe
started.
you can introduce Commit there really
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah, I can. Yeah, so I started Commit about a year and a half ago, and so 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 quickly, when I moved on from Hootsuite, I started a company in the blockchain and crypto space, which is
Mm,
one area I was really interested in. And after that, after about a year, sold the company, and then decided to move on and then start a new company. And
mm,
and back then, I kind of when I was at Hootsuite, I really enjoy like towards my the last few years of my time at Hootsuite, I was a senior management and I managed about a large engineering team at Hootsuite, and that's when I learned a lot about myself, what I enjoy doing. I love building teams and getting teams to build product together. That's always something I enjoy doing, obviously. But the other thing I really like is just like providing mentorship, really helping engineers to grow their career.
mm,
And yeah, and those are the things I really enjoy doing. And when I kind of exited from my last startup, one thing that I realized while talking to my business partner Greg was, we know so many amazing engineers out there, and they are not happy with their career in terms of um, being a clock in the machine,
mm,
getting stuck, not having fun, and practically speaking, a lot of those engineers, they would really enjoy working in the startup ecosystem, right?
mm,
But for practical reason, they're not. And and then on the other hand, a lot of the startups, the talent war is getting so heated in North America in general. Vancouver, as you know, Amazon, another big operation coming up, Facebook, everybody, right? And it's very hard for startup to attract high caliber talents.
mm,
So now you have these amazing engineers who would thrive in the startup ecosystem, but they're not yet. And then you have all these amazing startups out there, like there's a wall in between. So that's when I decided to launch Commit to really, figure out ways to break down that wall and
mm,
essentially solving engineers' problem. We built Commit really for the engineers. You look at all the business out there, whether it's an accelerator or incubator, recruiting firm, venture capital, all the stuff, they're all built for either companies or founders. Nobody's building anything for engineers. That really bothers me because we are really shifting from, the battleground really is really shifting from financial capital to human capital, right? Today starting a company, raising money is not that hard anymore. It's not like 20 years ago. You have to borrow money from your family or your friends, or you have to talk to the bankers who are like sharks, like very transactional. Now you have angels and VCs and incubators, accelerators. Like raising money is not hard anymore, but
mm,
putting a team together, finding the right talent, that's really hard, right?
mm,
So yeah, so the battleground really shifted, but you know, like who's taking care of the people, the actual human capital? So that's why we decided, okay, let's build Commit, taking care of the engineers, connecting them, with promising startup opportunities, and solve their problem in terms of, their financial stability. Obviously, joining a startup, lots of financial stability issue. How can we solve that? And then all the frictions of finding the right startup opportunity in North America for an individual engineer, that's really hard to do, right? engineers usually they're not connected, well connected in the, overall ecosystem. So what is the right opportunity for them? That's really hard. And then just going through all this recruiting funnel, like lots of interviews, lots of touch points, very stressful time, and life is too short, right? So that's those are the problem we are solving, and and then building Commit for.
So is the idea then you guys can actually bring on engineers and you're directly placing them, or you contract them and you subcontract them out?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, we are still pretty young, and we are iterating. We are figuring out different ways, but we hired engineers into Commit directly.
Mm.
So we provide engineers the stability, the benefits, the healthcare, and all the vacation and all that stuff, right? And then on the other hand, we centralize the opportunity seeking effort. What I mean
Mm.
by that is we connect with the startup ecosystem, especially technical leaders in the space, venture capitals and angel investors. When they make an investment into a startup, and they would introduce the startups to us. So we vet the opportunity coming into us and see if that's a fit for Commit, right? And then once they pass our filter, we introduce the startup to our engineers at Commit, and
Mm.
to see who is interested in that opportunity. If nobody
Mm.
is interested, then we just say no to the startup. But if at least one says I'm interested, then then the next step essentially we schedule a conversation between the engineer and the startup, just to get to know each other, see if there's if there's a potential fit, and then we design a 3 months trial period where the engineer get to work with the startup as a core team member, and building the core product in the early stage for 3 months. And after that, if they like each other, then we facilitate a full-time transition where the
Huh.
engineer get to join the startup as a full-time employee, sometimes as a technical co-founder, sometimes as an early employee, depends on the stage of the company, usually pretty early stage that we work with. And and then startups, the nature of startups is 9 out of 10 fails in a year or two. So
Mm.
what happens when that startup doesn't work out? Then the engineer would come back to Commit the next morning and pick up the paycheck again. We provide everything just as usual, and then place them into our internal projects that we have quite a few. And
Huh.
in the meantime, start finding the next opportunity for them. So that's kind of on a high. Obviously, there are lots of details behind the scene that we have to figure out, but essentially on a high level, that's the idea of Commit.
Wow. That is really cool. Like that just solves such a timely problem right now, like you've just described. Like all these engineers, Vancouver, for better or for worse, has created this engineering vacuum where a Facebook and an Amazon just picks up everybody and pays them really well
Yeah,
to
yeah,
go there, and so everybody gets
exactly.
sucked.
Yeah,
Wow. So,
yeah,
and you
yeah.
guys have internal projects too,
Sorry, what is that?
and you mentioned you guys have internal projects going as well.
Yes, we do. Yeah. So I mean, from internal project perspective, we just look at everything in terms of open source, right?
Mm.
And what we want to do is how can we contribute to the startup ecosystem overall, right? Obviously we are solving the talent issue, but at the same time, there's technology issue for startups as well. So what are the issues out there that we can solve, that we can open source, and just really drive down the overall cost of starting a company, right?
Hmm.
And as you see, look, we want more startups. We want more people to create more startups. Things
Hmm.
like Amazon, it really drives down the cost of infrastructure, which is great. And I'm sure, without Amazon Web Service and all the different clouds, there wouldn't be as many startups as as now, right? And but there's more to do. There's still a lot of technology friction, building startups, and those are the things we are looking into, by building open source tools to really drive down the cost, increase the efficiency, and also increase the quality for any startup to build and launch, a new SaaS product, for example.
Wow, that's cool. Have you guys launched any products already then?
Yeah,
Or,
so we are no essentially the initiative started late last year.
mm,
So we are still. I mean, it hasn't been launched in the public, but
Hmm.
we are building internally. We have our internal release, and as you know, we work with lots of startups, and a lot of our startup clients already benefit from the technology we built. I look forward to the point where we are confident and comfortable to release to the public as open source initiative.
Wow. That is really cool. I'm so glad to hear about things like this. Like it's a really, really cool idea that you came up with there. Huh.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
It's just like I think when you think about the long term, going back to COVID, yeah, just everything starting commit. We are solving like we are thinking big, but we are
Mm,
acting small, right? We are solving the problem of today, but if you think really big, just in the whole future of workspace,
mm,
um, it's just really exciting. And my business partner, my co-founder, like Greg and myself, we spend a lot of time just thinking about 5, 10 years down the road, what the
mm,
future of work would look like. But,
mm,
when talking about future of work, people think about automation, replacing a lot of jobs. And I mean, I think by now, most of people would say yes. Like, it's not a question of if, it's really a question of when, right? And I do think there'll be more and more knowledge workers. And one thing that I'm really passionate about is just like, can we live in a world where geolocation and opportunities are fully decoupled? Like, essentially, it
mm,
does not matter where you live. You have access to the opportunity, the best opportunity for you all the time, no matter where the opportunity is, right? So if remote working is actually part of that, right? When you think about the problem, how can you create a fluid kind of marketplace so transaction can happen quickly? And then how do you get people to work effectively remotely? Which has been a problem that's being solved over time since in the past like 5 or 6 years. And COVID-19 totally gave it a catalyst, and more companies are doing that, right. Yeah, it's just a really fascinating space. I encourage everyone to think about, if
mm,
people work remotely, and if I can live in, I assume most of people are from Vancouver. If I can live in Squamish or Whistler, but I have access to the best opportunity in San Francisco, or wherever it is. Wouldn't that be amazing?
mhm. That's awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that idea too. And yeah, I certainly see that happening. The gentleman that we'll have on our Monday show, he's an F5 employee. And when we talk to folks locally and they're like, "Hey, are you guys the only F5 employees in Vancouver?" Myself and Daryl, my account manager that I work with, we are the only ones in Vancouver, but we actually have a product manager that's in Kelowna working
Mhm.
for our Seattle
Yeah.
headquartered company. But he was the right guy for the job. And so, it makes sense to hire him wherever he is, and he can
Yeah.
do his work from there. And
Yeah.
his team, he works with teammates across a couple business units, but some of them are in like Israel.
Hmm.
And so, they have some time zone struggles, but
Yeah.
everything works in the end. Everybody can still communicate. We have lots of tools in order to do that. Sometimes you have to wake up a little bit early or stay up late.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
sometimes when you're
Yeah.
building a product, that happens too.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I mean, like, we are pretty fortunate in North America, right? Because this is where a lot of innovation happens, and there's a lot of time zone match. The worst case is 3.5 or 4 hour difference, I guess, and
Yeah.
that's not too bad, right? And it's yeah, it's just one of those things that I'm seeing. Like, there are a lot of companies doing that already, but I would say it's still relatively small percentage.
Mm.
It just reminded me back in 2012 or 13, when the idea of DevOps started, right. There are people started talking about combining operation and development together to create efficiency, to iterate faster according, with the whole agile practice. Um, and back then, people haven't heard of DevOps, but
No.
a lot of people are buying the idea, right? And now you look at pretty much DevOps is a de facto standard, pretty much for for any company.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'm really seeing remote working as the DevOps of 2012 and 13 ish, where
Mm,
there's a lot of successful stories already, but it's not the majority yet. And there's
mm,
going to be momentum that is pushing, pushing the whole movement much faster. External, internal. Obviously, again, COVID-19. I think it definitely give it a big boost, and
mm,
we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next few years.
mm. One of your points that you made earlier was thinking big and acting small. Is that something that was from Hootsuite that you've always had then?
Yeah, the good question. So yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think like I would say this is the type of lesson I've learned when scaling Hootsuite, back in the days, scaling up Hootsuite back in the days. Obviously, when we are like, there's a period of time we're on this kind of hockey stick growth curve, right? Our
Mm,
customers like increase, you know, every year by 5 or 10-fold, and um, that, and including the revenue, just overall business. And you have to do whatever it takes to withstand all these kind of extra load, right? Whether it's tech product or technology. And that's when you start thinking, because every day you're under pressure, right? There's always out technology outage, and you kind of knew if we were to do it this way, if we can get there, it's gonna work, right? But then, damn, it's so hard to get there because we have all this legacy. How do we get there? So you have this big vision and you think big, and but then you get frustrated when you don't act small. Like
mm,
there are period of time I just wish, can we just stop everything? Let's rebuild everything properly and then and just do that. It crossed my mind all the time, but obviously that wouldn't work for any company in that stage. So you're kind of forced to take baby steps, and I think over time I learned and I developed this kind of habit, this practice of you always want to think big so you know where you're heading towards to, but at the same time also think small and act small. What are the smaller pieces that you can bite off, and then gradually get there, right?
mm,
And that's how we build Commit as well, in terms that we think big in terms of the future of work. We want to see, this is what we envisioned. We are making a big bet on that direction. If that doesn't happen, then we are out of business at some
mm,
point, right? But that's the bet we are putting on. But then at the same time, we have to solve the problem of today in terms of financial stability that I mentioned, and removing all the interviews and frictions and stress. Those are the baby steps, but
mm,
there's more things to do along the way.
mm. And one thing we didn't really touch on too much was, so in between Hootsuite and Commit, you actually had another successful startup during that time in the blockchain space.
Yeah. That's a fun topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there are many memorable moments. You know, like so first of all, I just got really, that's actually why I left Hootsuite. I was just like the whole blockchain thing really, it was just really intriguing in early 2017 when I dive into that space. It was actually my co-founder for First Coin Capital. He reached out to me thinking about, hey, they're like, are you interested in this space? Maybe we can do something together. And I wasn't really interested at the beginning, but as I start diving into, the Bitcoin, reading the white paper and looking at Ethereum and just trying out coding myself, and I realized, a few things that really attracted me. The first of all, just the distributed system in general, because that's kind of my type of bread and butter when I was being the chief architect at Hootsuite, building large scale systems. And the way it solves the cap theorem, the cap, consistency, availability, network partitioning, it kind of it sort of solved that problem by the human incentive, by economical incentive, which is just really intriguing, to learn about that. And the second thing that I really love, the idea is decentralization, where there's no central party to control anything. That's kind of my management philosophy, back then as well, where I try to, like, I call myself a lazy manager. I don't want to be the central decision maker. I want to dedicate everybody to make their own decision. So when I left Hootsuite, I did spend 0 minute on knowledge transfer, because whatever I knew, people know already. I
Hmm.
spent more time talking to
Wow.
people about blockchain in general. So
Wow.
during my last few weeks at Hootsuite, the whole notice period thing.
Hmm.
Anyways, that's kind of, dive into that space, and my partner and I, we got into a bit of a fintech, building a fintech product on blockchain, and
Mhm.
ultimately acquired by a financial institution in New York.
Hmm.
So, like, it, like a typical startup cycle is like 4 or 5 years, right? You spend the first year just building the product, and then the second, the third year you're gonna raise money, and then there's like you continue to build it out, and then there's ups and downs, and at some point you either raise more money, or you get acquired, or you just fold. It's not working out, right? Like for us, I would say we went through that cycle in 1 year.
Wow.
We raised money, and we built out the product, and we talked to the regulators to get license, like from the Security Commission, BC Security Commission and Ontario Security Commission. Sorry, committee, and a commission, and then getting acquired, getting integrated, and moving on. And this whole cycle just went just like a year and a half. and
Wow.
and then at the same time, crypto was moving really fast as well. When I started the company, Bitcoin was about $5,000,
Hmm.
and in that peak time, as some of you may know, it was $20,000.
Hmm.
And right around the time we were acquired, it went back to about $15,000, and
Hmm.
then afterwards it went back to, I mean, 5,000 or 3,000. Like there's a big kind of boom and bust of the crypto space as well. So
Wow.
that's a pretty amazing experience, and then I also learned a lot about fintech in general.
Hmm.
I'm actually a licensed broker dealer, because as a director of the company, I had to, building a broker dealer kind of a platform. I have to be a licensed broker, so I have to take a course, take an exam, pass that exam, and get a license. So yeah, so I'm probably the best financial advisor in the tech space, I guess.
Yeah, well, after all these successful startups, you certainly are for that as well. Was that the plan to scale it and be acquired that quickly?
No, it wasn't at all. Yeah, it was a partnership conversation turned
Hmm.
into acquisition. Yeah, it's more almost like a blur.
Hmm.
There's just there's some good strategic kind of alignment between the parent company and us. So yeah, so that just happened pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. How many employees did you have at the point that you were acquired then?
Oof, good question. I think we have about full time and part time added up together about 18 people.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Wow.
about 18 people. Yeah.
Wow. And so they took all those employees with them to the with the acquisition then?
Yep, yep, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, that's cool. Interesting. So we have about 5 minutes left. I thought it'd be good, maybe, you've mentioned one thing in thinking big, acting small. Any other tips for somebody who's got a startup right now, trying to figure out their way, how to get going with it, or what they should think about to scale or
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, I mean, like another thing that I think just personally is really important for myself, and also I think for companies, is being adaptable, right?
Mm,
Especially in the startup world, things change pretty fast, and this whole build, measure, and learn, that loop, that iteration, like I take it by my heart.
mm,
I always, it's hard to do, it's not easy, it's so easy to say. I said that in 5 seconds, but it's
mm,
really hard to do. I train myself to think that way. I read books, I reflect on my actions in the past, I work with the team and doing retros, and I do everything I can to be closer and closer to the real practice of build, measure, and learn, right?
Mm.
And then obviously part of learning is adapt, right? Once you learn something new, whether it's from the product or from the market or from your customer feedback, whatever it is, you gotta be able to adapt, right? You have this big vision, great, but there are many ways to get there, and you don't want to be stuck with, oh, this is the way to do that. Like, that's where I see a lot of companies just fail, right?
Mm.
So I think being able to adapt and being flexible, and in this kind of build, measure, learn framework, I think that's beneficial for any startup. And honestly, any size of the business, it doesn't even matter big or small. But I think it's particularly important for much smaller companies, and that is your advantage, right? Competitive advantage. So I think that's kind of one thing I would mention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is, for very early stage startup, um, it's important to make your initial hires right.
Mm.
It's really important.
Mm.
Do not take any shortcut. Just because you need someone now, it doesn't mean you should really hire someone not a fit for the long term, like right away. You know,
Mm.
like the first, I would say the first few hires, pretty much, you know, uh, uh, um, dictates the long term culture of the company.
Wow.
And if you get it wrong, then imagine the impact down the road.
Yeah, I bet. I bet during that the phase of learning from what you might need to fix, if you have somebody who doesn't want to let go of a certain idea and not willing
Yeah,
to change, that can affect things.
yeah, and then also another thing is, as you bring on more and more people, there'll be more and more people like that, because the
Mm.
filter, the standard changed,
Can
right?
filter it down.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then more people like that would join you, and then it's just like a trickle down, all the way. And at some point you realize, okay, this is not working, but it's
Mm.
too late to fix, or it's too damn hard to fix, I guess.
Mm. Yeah. Cool. Very wise words, Bayer. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We
Yeah,
just
my
got a
pleasure.
minute
Yeah.
left. I thought it'd be great if you could share anything you can about how to get a hold of you, and maybe if there's people right now looking for opportunities with Commit, how they get in touch with Commit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I spend a good portion of my time on LinkedIn. I know a lot of people don't use LinkedIn anymore, but that's kind of the one tool I actually use quite a bit. And yeah, Twitter, yeah, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm not super active there. I am planning to. It's funny, like I work in the social media space for 10 years, essentially building tools for Twitter, but maybe it's too much for me. so
Yeah.
so I actually wasn't quite active on Twitter for a while, but I still check it out. So yeah, reach out to me on Twitter, or you can email me at the Beier@Commit.dev.
Mm.
And I mean, if you are interested in the future of work, or just interested in Commit, um, I'm more than happy to jump on the call, to have a conversation, to share my thoughts, and hear your thoughts as well.
Mm. Very cool. And any open positions would be all listed on the site, I would imagine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we don't have positions listed, because we constantly hire engineers. I mean,
Okay.
hire is the wrong word. It's really, we constantly bring in engineers into Commit. So we brought in about 15 engineers in the
Mm.
past 2 months, and
Wow.
we are planning to bring in another 10, 15 in the next month or two. So
Wow.
so yeah. So reach out to me. We are always looking at connecting great engineers with great startups. Yeah, just let me know.
Cool.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Bayer. I will take us out from here, but I just wanted to say I really appreciate you coming on, and really appreciate all of the knowledge that you've been able to share with all of the viewers as well. Like all these lessons learned, all the scars that you have that you're kind of passing on to other people, so they don't have to make the same mistakes or fall as hard. Really appreciate that, and everything you're doing to put back into the community is just awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me, Bo. I really had fun here.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. All
Yeah.
right, I'll take us out from here. Thanks a lot, Bear.
Okay, thanks, Bo. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for checking this out today. If you're watching via YouTube right now, go ahead and click subscribe down below. Also click the bell for notifications. That way you will find out when we are dropping a new video or when we're going live. Also, there's darylandboo.com. If you head over to that, leave your name and email address, we will drop a weekly technical newsletter in your inbox every Monday. Also, this is available via podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify. Head over to one of those, hit subscribe, and you'll be able to listen to us in the car on your commute or during a walk or a run. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time.